I am perfectly parented. I really believe that, which is a very, I mean it, which is a very, I'm driven by gratitude and guilt. I'm very aware that what they did was so all time that I feel a sense of giving back, so much so that it's not just to my children. I'm trying to, use modern technology and communication to give back as a whole. I was really put on by really special parents and put me in a real position to succeed at the face of what was politically correct at the time. I'm an immigrant who in the 80s and 90s, every Russian kid that came over during that time with my parents, education was the way out, right? We were all poor, we all lived in studios, education was the way out. And my mom created air cover for me to be an entrepreneur when the word didn't exist. And I'm unbelievably grateful for that. And so I just want my kids to feel like I put them in a position to succeed. I don't want them to be entrepreneurs. I don't want them to be anything other than whatever makes them feel the way I feel about my game. I want to support that. And I think the greatest mistake in our society right now is that parents feel that children are a product or an indicator of who they are, which allows them to manifest their insecurities on their children. I want to do the reverse of that, and I want to put them in a position to succeed.
Damn, dude, you're like a father, dude. I've known this man for a long time, and that's some grown-up shit, man. Wow. Okay. So to that, and then I started asking Michael, but Michael, we're gonna come back. I'm gonna ask Gary. I've met you. You had 12 people. How many do you have now?
850.
850. How many offices?
4.
4 offices. So it can't just be about Gary, although your name's on the door. How do you make sure?
Doesn't really fit on the door.
Yeah, both of your names are on the door, by the way. But he's got his nice signature.
Chuck part out.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. How do you ensure that the people who come into that organization understand what you were trying to build or are building?
I think.
And is it hard?
Anything great is hard. I think there's 2 things that I think they pull from opposite directions. When you ask that question, the first thing that runs through my mind is moldable dictatorship, right? There's just 4 or 5 things that I believe in tremendously.
So you definitely are Russian.
Yeah. I think it's super important to know what your 3 or 4 religions are, right? Empathy, it really matters to me. Attention really matters to me. The current state of culture really matters, and we have to create that way, and we have to strategize that way. But if you bring up my 15 or 20 direct reports, a lot of them will talk. If Ryan Harwood, I bought Pure Wow last year, if he came up here, he was like, I didn't even talk to Gary the first 6 months. I tend to be
lucky him.
I tend to be very hands off. Other than if people are, to me, the key things are you trying to succeed by tearing everybody else down versus just building the biggest building? That to me is like something I really spend a lot of time on. Look, managers by nature don't have the luxury that the person that has the name on the door has, which is I'm the logo. I have no vested interest if my CFO is right or the entry-level accountant's right. My vested interest is that the logo is right. So I'm able to be agnostic. For a manager, there's a lot of people who live their lives that when they hit $315,000 a year, that's a real mitzvah, like they made it, like that's what they want. And what happens is they switch into defense. They were on offense their whole life until they got to the point where the work-life balance and the money and what other variables in their lives, it's set, and then they go on defense, and what they're doing is they're suppressing anybody who wants to encroach on their territory, which naturally are the people that work for them. And I spend an ungodly amount of time paying attention to that dynamic. Everything else I feel comfortable with. At this point in my life, I now feel confident in my intuitive understanding of human behavior and how it impacts communication and products. So I'm going to continue to bet on that skill, and that will lead us in the right direction. Voice, AR, ML, whatever it may be.
Text.
Of course.
I told him about text. He was like, nah, it's not that big. Now he's like, text me.
Please. Good thing I record everything. We'll see.
All right, let's go back. Go to the videotape.
I think that that's what I spend a lot of time thinking about. Empowering them to no end while making them accountable for 2 to 4 things that really matter at the end of the day. The reason people struggle is because when you're an entrepreneur, it's really fun to work somewhere, right? When you work somewhere, when something goes wrong, including if you get fired, you blame your boss. My boss fucked me, right? Like entrepreneurship's difficult because there's no wiggle room out. You fucked up. Like everything that's wrong in my company is 100% my fault. And there's hundreds of issues right now. I hired the head of that department. I created that process. Like everything runs through me, and I think people struggle with entrepreneurship more because they're worried about the judgment, and you've got to be able to be numb to that feedback, and that is not most people's makeup.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I'm learning that, to be honest.
And Bonin, I think the thing that's happening, one thing that everybody here has to understand is like, look, we've lived through 8 or 9 years now of economic prosperity. There's a fuckload of people running around this town right now that think they're special. They've never made money any month they've run their company. They've lost money every month.
Yeah.
Like people cheer raising capital. You gave up a piece of your business.
So Gary, I'm going to ask you a question.
Sure.
So there was something like 160 plus or minus unicorns minted last year, right? Well, hold it.
Okay.
How many of those, right? How many of those will be around 3 years, 5 years, and how many of those founders, right? $1 billion is the valuation of this company. How many of those founders, right, are going to walk away with a meaningful amount of money?
Probably 10 to 20% will be around and do their thing, and 80 to 90% of the founders will leave with meaningful money.
With meaningful.
Well, of those 10 or 20.
Yeah, but
of those 10 or 20. But here's my point.
One more time, I want to make sure we're agreeing, because I think 90% of the 160 right now are going to leave with meaningful money.
Really? I don't think so.
Well, first of all, it might just be we have a different definition of meaningful money. No, it might. No, really, it might. I mean that. Meaning, I think somebody who runs a company and is extremely good at raising capital for a company that eventually goes belly up, but she or he is able in Series C and D to take home $10 to $30 million and take it home is meaningful money for something that ended up being a house of cards.
Okay. My definition and yours are different. but the reason why I anchor that as 10 to 30 is 1 to 3% of the whole shooting match, right? I mean, these are companies worth $1 billion plus, but we do agree on this, which is most of them will just go poof, right? So think about that. They have been exalted by the press, right? 160 unicorns, right? Unicorns. And they're gonna, $1 billion plus. And the bulk of them are house of cards. The bulk of them have never made money. The bulk of them are really a product of financial engineering and good salesmanship. And by the way, a financial community that has more money than it has either brains or deal flow. And there's a certain urgency.
There's too much money in the system. Guys,
how do you feel about venture, Gary? First of all, can I just tell you, me and Gary, this will be the 5th year that we've done this. Everybody who I put between us gets chewed up. And this is the most docile I've ever. I'm like, oh my God, it's working. So I brought the big gun. I was like, put Michael right in front.
I'm holding my own.
Yeah.
I think.
How do you feel about venture?
Look, the biggest financial loss in my career personally was 15 months ago or so when I decided to not close out the fund that I was raising and give back everybody's capital, yet I was carrying the talent and anticipating the 2% management fee on a $150 million fund and took a complete bloodbath. And I do think $10 million is meaningful money. And so I'm not in the business. I'm not in the business. I'm not in a, I came from zero. So when you come from zero, losing 7 figures out of being noble feels really fucked up. And so it's the most proud I've ever been in my life. And it happened because as I was raising this fund, I just woke up one morning and said, holy shit, I don't believe in this game right now. And so what am I gonna do? Lose, because I, it's funny, losing that money was really smart because I know myself, which is if I ran that fund, and that money got lost, and it would have, because if you don't believe in something completely, you're now guessing. The reason I've been good, I don't predict. People are like, he predicted shit. I don't predict anything. I fucking execute early, and then I communicate about it. I have really big aspirations to be an all-time entrepreneur. I think that there are a lot of people who are going to make a lot more money and make far more impactful businesses than me. But I think I'm up to something with how many entrepreneurs I'm impacting along the way. I know I'm giving up a lot of economics every year, which, for that purpose, and I think that should play itself out nicely. It feels nice to live my life right now, getting 20 to 50 DMs or emails a day of detailed 15-paragraph stories of how this one video or the consistent listening while they're running to the podcast. It feels nice.
I got a couple of those off the back of my book, and it's
a high that you can't replicate.
You can't replicate it.
It's funny to me. It's getting an email like that, or going garage sailing and buying like a Thundercat for $1 that I know is $11 on eBay. Both those, but I mean this is interesting. Both those things give me a bigger high than landing a $7 million client. They just do. And I think all of us have those versions. There's things that, excite you or make you feel good that aren't necessarily tied into the economics in the business world that you're in. And I think those are things that we have to pay attention to.